Welcome, everybody. Hello, welcome, everybody. It's so nice to see everybody here. This is so great. We did it, guys. We did it. We did it. We did it. We made it happen. Do you have, I guess you have the roll call because
I will note who's here.
everyone's here but Ben. We got it. All right. Can we, and Karen's on Zoom.
Karen's also.
Oh,
We really did it.
amazing.
I know. Can we quickly approve the February and March minutes? Great. All in favor? Great. All right. Quick land acknowledgement. We begin this meeting by acknowledging that we are on the traditional homelands of the Osage Nation, Missouri, and Illini Confederacy. We pay respect to elders, both past and present, and we thank them for their hospitality and stewardship of this land. So, we're very excited to start tonight with Gabby Eisner of MICA Project. Talk to us a little bit about immigration enforcement in our region, and I'm going to let her take it away. Thanks for being here.
I go on you.
Do you have a
Mic
green
on?
button on here?
The green.
Okay, is that better? Okay, cool. I'm Gabby. It's good to be here with you all. I am the advocacy strategist at the MICA Project. For those who are not familiar with the MICA Project, we are a community organization that offers free and low-cost legal services to the immigrant community. We also have a client support services department, which helps immigrants navigate difficult systems outside of the legal system. So connecting people with resources, helping folks navigate healthcare, education, housing. And then because of the realization that both of those systems are not made for people to thrive, they started this advocacy department, of which I'm a part of. And we have been doing a lot of community defense work, a lot of neighborhood organizing, and as you'll hear in a little bit, work around ending the police to ICE pipeline. And so that is what I'm coming to you to talk about is mostly what immigration enforcement looks like in the region. I've tried to pull out Clayton specific data so that we can talk through that, and just talking a little bit more about ways that folks in Clayton and really all across the region can take action with us. So if you'll go, you can jump ahead
Is
a
there
few
a
slides.
mouse up there? Try checking that drawer.
Yes.
Maybe able to
You're
drive there
right.
if it works. Try to scroll down. If not,
I have to turn it on, maybe?
if that doesn't work, I can certainly do it.
Ooh, yes. Okay, great. Thank you. So yeah, I already explained what I'm going to talk about. Okay. I like to start off with a brief history of what the police to ICE pipeline has looked like. I think in a time like we're living in right now, it can be very easy to focus on the current moment. And I think it's important to dream beyond this moment and reflect at how we got here. So, local collaboration between local law enforcement and immigration agents is not new, although it is not that old either. The first time we see it written into law was in 1996 when a big piece of immigration legislation passed. And in Section 287G of that legislation was a provision that deputized local law enforcement to act as immigration agents. Do folks know what 287G agreements are? So they're essentially just a formalized agreement between a local law enforcement agency or state law enforcement agency and now ICE, that really deputize the local law enforcement agents to act as immigration agents. And there's three different types of them, but essentially gives them the power and the responsibilities of ICE. We see that many of those things are happening outside of 287G agreements. So I'll be talking a little bit about 287G agreements, but that's not to say that places like Clayton that don't have 287G agreements, that's not happening here. So fast forward 6 years, 2002, there was no 287G agreement signed until 6 years later. And a lot of that has to do with I mean, the year 2002 was after September 11th attacks. A lot of nativist policies were being put in place, and the signing of the first 287G agreement and the subsequent ones was part of that. And then Obama comes in, and Obama is often termed the deporter in chief, and that is because he achieved record high deportation numbers and was able to do so by relying on the police as these force multipliers in carrying out immigration enforcement. And so then Trump saw that this framework really worked and came in and adopted it and expanded local collaboration, and really now during the second administration is relying heavily on local police to carry out immigration enforcement. And so that's what we're seeing in our region. We're seeing that contact with the police is the main way that people are being arrested and detained. I won't go into too much details, but there are these promises of financial incentives from the federal government that any local law enforcement agency that signs onto a 287G agreement could get a lot of money. These are promises, and these aren't actually happening in practice. So localities are actually ending up spending a lot of money, diverting a lot of local resources to federal immigration enforcement because they aren't receiving these reimbursements in practice. So I mentioned that there has been this huge growth in 287G agreements across the country. So you can see the different colors represent the different administrations that the 287G agreements were signed under. So the blue was Obama administration. So you can see he certainly expanded 287G agreements, but not to the extent that Trump has. And that Trump is the red dots. Here in Missouri, there were 0 287G agreements before 2025. And now I checked yesterday and there were 98 in our state. So we're seeing about 1 new 287G agreement in Missouri each day. And that is trickling into the St. Louis region. We've seen several different municipalities in St. Louis sign on to 287G agreements. But I will mention again that a lot of this is happening outside of 287G agreements. So a lot of municipalities that don't have these agreements are still collaborating very heavily with ICE. And I have a map later on to kind of show that. So here in the St. Louis region, there are people that say ICE isn't yet here, or when ICE comes here. I want to make it very clear that ICE is here. ICE has been here since the inception of the agency. They have an office downtown. They are carrying out enforcement in our region. And the vast majority of immigration enforcement is being carried out by the police. And so what that looks like is the police are racially profiling drivers, pulling them over for some sort of traffic violation, whether that be driving too fast, driving too slow, swerving, taillights out. We've expired plates is a big one, and then escalating that traffic stop to an arrest because people who are undocumented in Missouri cannot get a driver's license, and so they are driving without a license. And then those people are being held in police custody until ICE comes and picks them up. And I don't normally talk about like what happens after that, but they are immediately transferred to detention at that point. And we are seeing that 99% of people that enter detention are not leaving detention. So really that traffic stop ends in deportation for most people. I included some data here. These are outdated numbers. So I got new numbers today and quickly updated them. Sorry, they didn't make the cut. I can send you the new slides. But the new numbers are, if I'm remembering correctly, it's around 66% of people detained are detained after an interaction with the police. So it's a little lower than what we have here. And that is because a lot of enforcement is happening at the ICE office downtown. So when people are going to their check-ins, trying to do things the right way, they have a pending case and are checking in with ICE or a subsidiary of ICE called the Intensive Supervision Appearance Program, are being detained at that office after going into their appointment. And I think those numbers are a little also off balance because the rapid response number is being passed around at the ICE office between folks. So I think we are receiving more calls from people at the ICE office than we are saying for someone who is pulled over at a traffic stop. But all that to say is the vast majority of enforcement is being carried out in the region by the police. And of those interactions with the police, the vast majority are at traffic stops. So
Did you have a different number at traffic stops or did I miss that?
So this number is like 66, 65%. And of that number, 64% of interactions are at traffic stops. And then 65% is at police. So there are some examples of the police going to the homes of people, and that's usually in the cases we have examples of, it's say a domestic dispute, or at a traffic stop. But ICE is also carrying out traffic stops, so that's why that number is a little higher. But yeah, I can get you those updated slides. And also there's an updated map, which is a lot prettier than this one and a lot more complete.
Can I ask you before you go too far on that slide? So do you have any reason to think why these numbers, the numbers you just quoted are relatively speaking quite a bit less than what we were on your slide? So do you have a sense of why that is?
So one of the reasons is certainly because more enforcement is being carried out at those check-ins downtown ICE office. I don't think the number in practice is actually that much smaller. Just the awareness of the hotline, which is where we get our data from, is more. People are passing around our number at the ICE office downtown, and folks that are going into their check-ins usually go in with the St. Louis Rapid Response Line, the hotline number. So for folks who don't know, there is a St. Louis Rapid Response Line, and that is something that folks can call if they have a loved one who is detained. And so that's where we get a lot of this data from. So I think the main reason why we are seeing it be lower is because of that, because more enforcement is happening and also because more folks are calling from that area.
Thank you.
So the map, like I said, the new map is also much prettier and much more complete than this. Over the last year or so, there have been 600 unique callers to the hotline. And so that means 600 people who have had a loved one who is detained, and those are 600 different loved ones who were detained. And of that data, we only have where the enforcement action happened for about 150. So this isn't really complete data. And in this map, it's quite a bit less than that 150. It's about 100. So I would wait for the more complete data. But one thing I wanted to point out is that a lot of enforcement activity is happening along Highway 70. The different colors represent whether or not, so orange is the locality does not have a 287G agreement, and red is the locality that has a 287G agreement. But what I really wanted to point out is that there's a dot over Clayton. And so that leads us to believe that Clayton Police Department is collaborating in some form, or if not the department as a whole, certain agents are collaborating with ICE. And so I dug a little bit deeper into that data, and there were 6 instances that we are aware of. That means 6 instances where somebody called the hotline. I have the specifics of those cases, so if folks have questions later and you want to give me a minute to pull up the cases, so the dates, and also what the interaction was. What I did notice is that I think it was only 1 or 2 were at traffic stops. There was another one in which a person was in a store shopping, and the police noticed something about their plates and waited for them at their car. And so when they came out, that is when they were taken into custody and then detained. There was a domestic dispute on there. I told myself I was going to remember all of these. Anyway, I can get that data if folks are interested. Yeah.
Thank
So I know that the Clayton Police Chief has said that they are not collaborating. So there is evidence to the contrary, whether or not that is with his knowledge or it's an individual officer who is doing that.
Can I ask a question really quickly?
Yes, please jump in whenever.
With the county being located in Clayton and the county jail being here, how do you capture that data and where?
So I did like dissect out that data from it. There are quite a few instances of people being held at the county jail. So there are things called an ICE hold. So when somebody is taken into custody by the police, they can only be held for a certain amount of time. And an ICE hold is an extension of that. So typically it's 48 hours beyond that, but it also can be more. So if it's 48 hours plus weekends, plus holidays, plus, so I did not include that in this map, but that is also happening. And there are quite a few cases of people being held at the county jail here until ICE comes and ICE picks them up at the county jail.
So just, yeah, you go ahead.
Surrounding areas that were brought to, these were people from surrounding areas that were brought to, yeah.
Yes, so both. So the 6 instances are people that were grabbed in Clayton, and then there are an assortment of other instances of people being transferred here from other municipalities.
Is it, based on how you described it, is it, I'm trying to understand whether this data is based on someone calling the hotline and saying, I or someone I know was taken into custody in Clayton under these circumstances, right? Which is
Yes.
fine. I just want to be clear.
Yes. And I think that is where, like, you're leading me. And so where I wanted to go,
Okay,
because I
so-
think
yeah.
you all have some sort of power to get more information about what is happening here.
Yeah.
And so, like you said, that these are people that are calling and they're like, it's the police, but maybe they're not sure. Like, I am, they're not saying it's the Clayton Police Department who picked me up. Sometimes they are, but sometimes that's not what they're saying. So could it be the St. Louis County Police Department? Could it be? We don't know. And so I think digging deeper into that, doing some records requests. That's what we've done in other municipalities to really figure out what is the specific situation, how was contact made with ICE, because that is something that looks different in every municipality and really good information for us to know, like, how is that data sharing happening? Is it like the officer picking up the phone and calling ICE, which is what it looks like in a lot of places, or is it some sort of other mechanism that's in place? But yeah, it's a really good point because we don't actually, this is anecdotal evidence and not, yeah.
I've had several conversations with Chief Smith about this exact issue, and he has told me unambiguously that when there's a traffic stop, they do not check somebody's immigrant status. They don't do that. The only times when they've contacted ICE was when someone was actually charged with a serious crime and may have their immigrant status may be undocumented. And it's only happened once or twice over the past years. So if what you're saying is something different, I'm more than willing to run it down, because what you're saying is that if some police officer is calling ICE, I don't think Chief Smith even knows about it, and he should.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's exactly what we have seen in other municipalities, that, the chief may have created like this department-wide like not written down policy, but policy that we're not going to divert our local resources to federal immigration enforcement. But there are, like, for example, in the city, like the city consistently comes out and says SLMPD is not collaborating with ICE. But we have a lot of cases of people calling the hotline, being pulled over for a traffic stop, and that officer is calling the hotline or calling ICE. Also calling the hotline in one case that happened a few weeks ago on accident.
They've been stopped and Clayton by county police, so that's,
Yes, yeah, it very well could be a different police department. But yeah, I think if we could get more information on that, there could be more digging done on that. That would be great. And I can provide you like the specific dates. So when
Yeah.
you get that
Yeah, yeah.
information, you can like line it up and see.
Get that over to me, then I'll make sure that
Perfect.
check with the police
Yeah.
department.
Yep, I can do that. And I will say that one of them was particularly concerning because it was the passenger in the car and not even the person driving, which is unconstitutional to ask for the papers of passengers in the vehicle. So especially in that case, those
let me
type of
say
collateral
one
arrests.
one thing further that we don't, Clayton doesn't stop cars for non-compliance with expired plates, for example. They don't. There has to be another reason why the car is being stopped, okay? And so incidentally, it may be expired plates, it may lead to other things, but they're not just, if they wanted to stop cars because they had expired plates to clean, we'd be swamped, you know?
Yeah, yep. Yeah, and we're seeing a myriad of traffic violations that people are pulled over for, but I don't have like the specifics, like when somebody calls the rapid response line, they're not necessarily, sometimes they say why they were pulled over, but it's not always clear why they were pulled over. Anything else? Any other questions or ideas? So these municipalities have 287G agreements. Yeah, so there's 5 municipalities in North County plus the I don't know what it's called. The North County Police Collaborative also has a 287G. St. Charles has a 287G. But like I said, it's very concerning to have a 287G agreement, and it can be happening without one.
The intensity of the circles. So you said something earlier about 6 in Clayton. How do they compare in terms of the numbers? So we see St. Charles is more intense. I'm just curious.
Yeah, I can get you the breakdown of those numbers. So the Ashray Foundation just released like updated numbers today. So I don't have like the most up to date. I was like taking notes very fast. But they're going to have a dashboard on their website which shows all of this data broken down month by month and also region by region. So I would say from the places that I have looked at, 6 over the course of a year has been certainly smaller than other places. In Creve Coeur, for example, which doesn't even have a dot on this map, but the police chief told us he hands over about 6 people each month. So it's certainly, and again, like this is the data of people calling us, so not everybody is calling us, but that is information we've received and seems to be more of the norm is around, especially depending on the size of the municipality too. But it does seem to be less than other places.
Okay, thank you.
But not as small as not as small as some jurisdictions that are doing a really good job. So I will say that.
Did you say the police chief in Creve Coeur told you that he hands over he like detains and transfers 6 people a month?
Yes. Yes.
I don't think their city council knows that.
Their city council has been very great at working with us, and
That's what
there's
I
a group
thought.
of folks
Yeah, I have a
organizing
friend
there
that-
too.
So, yeah.
So I am hopeful there can be some change there. because oftentimes it is just a traffic stop in Creve Coeur, which is concerning for people who are just trying to get to work or to school or to the grocery store, or it makes it quite dangerous, and why we're seeing the impacts in our community that we are. So that leads me to what can municipalities do? There are many different ways that municipalities like Clayton can limit the extent to which local resources are diverted. I know you all are trying to make Clayton a place that is safe and inclusive for all people, regardless of immigration status. And so, like, yeah, appreciate all the digging you can do into this, and ways that if they are collaborating to push back. So some of the things that we are specifically asking for example, if I was driving through Creve Coeur without a license, I would be given a fine and sent on my way. But if someone is Black or brown, or has whose first language is not English, that stop escalates to an arrest because they're driving without a license. And so we want to end that practice of, there's no mandate that you have to arrest somebody for driving without a license. And we've gotten some pushback on that from police chiefs, but there is actually no statute that says you have to arrest somebody for driving without a license. And so immigrants should be treated the same way as everybody else in the community. And similarly, an end to the practice of honoring ICE detainers. Immigrants should not be held in custody any longer just to give ICE time to come and get them. A pretty low-level ask is for Clayton not to sign on to a 287G agreement. And then getting more information how data sharing happens, if it's happening, what it looks like. And then something that I know you all have heard of and there's some questions about is FLOC. FLOC is a very concerning surveillance system. They share data with ICE, with Customs and Border Protection, CBP. They share information with every law enforcement agency in the country, which means they also share information with localities that do have 287G agreements. And so if if this data is available to someone, say, in the Hillsdale Police Department, we know they are willing to go to other localities to make those arrests. And so canceling the contracts with FLOC is one way that people can be safer in Clayton. And I will talk about that a little more in a bit because I know there's some questions on it, so I'll share a little more information on that. But we are at the MICA project building up these local campaigns across the region. We have a strategy meeting next Thursday at this time. And that is where we will break out by municipality. So I mentioned that Creve Coeur, there's a group of folks who are organizing. There are also groups in many different municipalities. And so getting folks together to really figure out what's happening in their own municipality, and then doing what they can to limit the extent to which local authorities are collaborating with ICE. So that's something you can definitely share out with folks in Clayton. And then is everybody, I mentioned FLOC before without even asking if everybody was familiar with FLOC. Yes. Okay, great. So I think one of the most concerning things about FLOC is that they're called ALPRs, automatic license plate readers, but they don't just capture your license plate. They capture your car's location, the date and time they passed by that location, the make and model and color of your car, individual features about your car, bumper stickers, dents in your car, if you have a bike rack. And this information is stored forever, essentially. And it's a massive database that they may say is not shared with ICE or CBP, but it is shared with places like the Real-Time Crime Center, which shares that information with everybody else. So even though maybe they don't have an MOU to share that data with ICE, they do have an MOU with places that then share that information with ICE. So we have seen that all FLOC cameras share their data with ICE and CBP. And this data is accessible to all law enforcement agencies in the country. I again, like local, state, federal. And so it can be used by any of these agencies. For now, I'll focus on ICE to map where someone lives, where they work, where their kids go to school. It can also, of course, map if you go to a protest, and really every move you make in your car. So there's documented evidence that this has been used to target immigrant families, to kidnap specific people in communities. It is something that ICE is relying heavily on to carry out their enforcement. So it certainly targets and harms immigrants, but I also think it should be a concern to everybody because it targets and harms activists. It targets and harms people who are seeking an abortion, people who identify as LGBTQI+. It targets so many members of our community. And from what I know, there's at least 14 locations in the contract between Clayton PD and FLOC of cameras. Now, FLOC is interesting because they don't just target city governments and police departments for contracts. They also target HOAs and private businesses. So it's very likely that there are more than that across FLOC, but in terms of who the contract with Clayton PD is, there seem to be about 14 locations across the city.
I think we know we have two that are under contract with neighborhoods, right?
Okay.
There's more than that.
Or
Yeah.
at least a couple.
Neighborhoods and then other institutions as well. And I will say we've been speaking with our FLOC rep, and we will have a FLOC rep at an upcoming city council meeting. So we're just trying to finalize that date. We'll let everybody on the Equity Commission know when that discussion is going to be. So if you want to tune into that or attend that meeting, we'll make sure you all know when that's going to occur.
If you don't mind.
I'm sorry. Oh,
Yeah, I was going to say FLOC sales reps are sales reps, and so they are notorious for lying.
I had never heard of Flock till maybe 30 minutes ago.
Oh, great.
Okay. So this may sound pretty dumb, but who owns the cameras and who maintains the cameras? And,
FLOC does.
you know, I mean, did Clayton somehow contract with someone to gather all this data? It almost sounds like China, you know. What could you?
Yeah.
explain a little bit?
Yeah, so it is quite concerning how this data is accessible to everybody and how you can map where, I mean, there's documented cases of like ex-lovers like in the police department mapping their partner across the country and like their movements, and so there's like evidence that it is used for stalking and like can
Like surveillance, but
yeah, so it is one of ICE's biggest contractors in terms of surveillance companies. But yeah, like you said, it is like there is a contract where Clayton will pay FLOC
is Flock
for
a
these.
private company?
It is a private company. Yeah.
Yeah, I did a little bit of digging because I too had never heard of this thing. It's actually owned by Peter Thiel, Palantir.
By who?
Peter Thiel, Palantir. Yeah, so it's part of that Palantir
That's a
thing.
giant.
Yeah, the giant eye in the sky.
And I will say, while that like we tend to focus on FLOC, like there are other companies who are doing the same thing and are getting bigger as like people are becoming more and more aware of how dangerous FLOC is to community members. There are other different names that are under also Peter Thiel, like popping up. So I would just be, it is not just FLOC that we have problems with. It is these companies that are like willing to share this data with everybody. And this data can be used and abused in many ways to target community members.
Do you know of an alternative that is not sharing the data?
So no, I think the alternative is no ALPRs, just because we have seen how ungovernable all of these companies are. And yeah, I think I'll leave it at that.
I don't know if you're aware of what our neighbors are doing. I think University City they got sued, I think, or I forget what it was
They had
exactly?
some and they were considering getting more, and it's been a like open discussion. They're talking about it, just like we are, like we've,
Okay.
yeah.
Do we pay Flock? Or does Flock
Yes,
pay
so,
us, or-
so we, like, I would describe it, and David, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but it's basically like a subscription service. And so we pay them, they do everything. They install, maintain, provide the physical equipment and the infrastructure of the system online in the cloud. And we can set certain, like we can establish certain settings that identify like who we share with. And we have really great internal policies that are audited consistently by our police department on how our police officers use the system. But we don't currently have the ability to require that type of compliance from other agencies that do searches. And so that's kind of in our most recent discussion as a council, that was kind of one of the big topics, is like the general consensus and is that, we have a good amount of confidence in our department and our ability to like audit the data and the behaviors. And we have had some significant successes solving crimes, some very serious crimes, using flock data as an aspect of the evidence in the investigation. But it looks like from like what we can see, like we don't have the ability to prevent people from just like downloading all of our data.
Mm.
And so that, for me, that's like the biggest concern. And so that's why we're going to try to get Flock here. We're going to try to understand. We're going to make sure we all understand what the options are and
Yeah, and there's also
what to do.
a really good page that Jenny Schwartz, a corporal in our police department, our PIO, I think you all know Jenny, that she's been building with a lot of information on this, and that should be published here shortly. So as soon as that link is live, I'll send that out as well, just so you can get a sense of what this system is, how we utilize it. But as Councilmember Patel mentioned, we talked about this extensively at our retreat with the city council, and
Yeah.
it's something they're going to be talking about, especially the external sharing component of that. And then that's the big question, I think, when the flock rep comes in is how you ratchet that down or how you get better control over that external sharing. If that's even, a possibility or capability. There's all kinds of toggles and you can flip them. Like we don't share with the federal government. We don't share with agencies outside of Missouri, different things. But if there are workarounds, we're trying to figure out exactly what those are and if there's a way to shut those down. Or agencies that may have policies in place that we don't agree with here and we wouldn't want our data to be used by those particular agencies. Can we cut them out of that sharing? So we're trying to figure out exactly how much control we have over that. And so that's where that rep's going to be helpful. But it's an ongoing
Yes,
discussion.
Would only pertain to the 14 with the contract with the police department. That doesn't pertain to any of the ones that have contracts with HOAs or anything.
Right, but those are
Yeah.
only shared with our police department
Right.
and they don't go into the general database. So Clayton Police can see what happened in the neighborhood. The neighborhood can also see what happened in
Right.
the neighborhood.
I remember they came to my neighborhood trying to sell it to us a couple years ago and we said no.
Right, and then, but as far as that data just going out to, some
Or to the
department in
not
Mississippi
payment
being able to
employee.
look at what happened in this neighborhood, they can't actually see that.
I would just add, I think we spent 90 minutes with the chief at our retreat and I think 3 other members of the police department going through this. My sense was the police department still feels, our police department feels like they do have control on this information and that on balance, it's a system that works. On the other hand, they heard from all of the council people concerns, some of the concerns that are raised today. And I think to some extent, we challenge the police department to sort of come back and continue to give us a higher level of comfort. A flock representative was going to be at the retreat we had on the program. There was a problem. The flock representative couldn't make it, which I think still limits us to some extent. We don't have a comprehensive data analysis because Flock, we had at least, I'd like to hear from Flock and I haven't, I'd like someone from Flock to say, okay, we hear your concerns and you shouldn't be concerned, or you should be concerned less or whatever, or, it's the way it is, tough, live with it. Whatever it is, we haven't heard from them. So I hope when we do, and I appreciate your comments today. So I think all these things, when we bring them all together, we have to evaluate, I'd like, you've said a lot of things that I'd be interested in what the chief has to say, whether he thinks all of the comments are appropriate or not, but all these things we need to bring together before we, I think, make any decision. So, but again, I think you're bringing this to our attention is very helpful.
No, and I'm glad this conversation was started long before I came here. So that's great.
New to me.
Yeah, I mean, I'm also glad it's new to some folks.
I'm not really have an opinion about it at all.
Yeah. And I think my last point on Flock will be to encourage you all to listen to community members who have concerns about Flock, because the sales rep is going to say that it is not being shared and that data is not being shared. And I was at a conference recently specifically around automatic license plate readers, and we mapped how easy it is to get data from places that don't share it. So even though Clayton PD is trying not to share that data with other places, if they share it with Creve Coeur and Creve Coeur shares it with the Real-Time Crime Center, ICE has that data. And so it's much less like active sharing and more so just like it goes into this abyss, and everybody has access to it. So I have not specifically looked at like Clayton's agreements or their MOAs or anything, so I won't comment on that, but I know that there are a lot of community members, some who are in this room, who are doing that deep dive and are doing that investigative research. And so I would really rely heavily on those folks for who that is being shared with and who it's not. And then I think the last thing I'll say, and I know I'm going over my time, is one of the things that we're doing a lot of is community defense work, building up community defense networks, making sure that people have what they need to be able to protect themselves and their neighbors. And so I mentioned we're doing a lot of neighborhood organizing, having folks get to know one another, have safety plans in place at their workplace, at their home, in their neighborhood. And we know that that's not going to stop every deportation, but it is a way for people to get to know one another, to build real local power, and to put a cog in the deportation machine so that we can protect some of our community members. And one way in which we are
More about what that community defense is
looks
and
like. Yeah.
Are you getting them? Okay.
We have kind of like 3 different buckets that fit under community defense. One of them is ICE Watch, which has converted into a lot of like watching immigration enforcement, so recording, documenting. The rapid response number that I shared earlier has 2 parts. So you can call it if you have a loved one who is detained and get help locating your loved one, getting in communication with your loved one, getting your loved one an intake with an attorney. And the second piece is if you see enforcement activity, whether that be by the police, whether that be by ICE, whether it be by any other federal agency, because we know HSI, Homeland Security Investigations, and other federal agencies are also supporting in immigration enforcement. So that's a number that folks can call if they think there may be immigration enforcement happening. And then from there, there are channels in which community members can go to that scene and verify and document and record what is happening. So that's one pathway of community defense. We also have neighborhood groups. We are working to build up neighborhood groups all across. Of course, we are more well connected. Micah being in the city with city folks, and so there's a lot more neighborhood groups in the city, but they are also all across the region. And these are groups of neighbors who just get together and talk about things that they care about, but also they're a group that if something happens in their neighborhood, they know what to do, they have a plan in place, and they're organizing around a whole host of issues, some of which is surveillance related, some of which is ending the police to ice pipeline, housing, whatever they need in their community. And then the last piece that we are working on is workplace preparedness. This is where we go and talk to workers, make sure that they know their rights in the workplace and that they have a safety plan with their coworkers. So we have different ways we do this. We can go and offer trainings to workplaces about their rights in the workplace. We can review safety plans to sharpen them. And then the biggest thing we do is we go and canvas. And we go around, we talk to workers, we give them know your rights materials, and we talk to them about building a safety plan. And usually we don't just canvas a place once, we'll go back a few times to make sure that they have a safety plan in place. We have canvassed hundreds of businesses since August. But I don't think we've canvassed any businesses in Clayton. And so if there are places in Clayton that you think need this information, or even as you're going out to eat or going to the store and want to talk to workers about it, I'm happy to get you all workplace preparedness kits and, you know, have a conversation around how you have that conversation with somebody. So that's what our community defense efforts look like. I included a QR code for our upcoming events and actions, and it also has a link to our workplace preparedness resources. So if you want to print them out yourself, you're more than welcome to do that. They're in English and Spanish. We're working on getting other languages. But yeah, that's all I have. My email's on the screen. Happy to stay in communication. I will certainly get you the updated slides and the specific instances that were reported to the hotline.
Great, thank you.
Do I just send that to you, Lauren? And then
You
okay,
can.
okay,
You
or
can
I
send
can
it to
send
me.
it to
That's
you
totally
as well.
fine.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
Yep, of course.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Can I ask one question? Or
Yeah.
Is that okay?
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm curious, one of the things that I've heard from that I do hear from organizations and I heard from a local business when talking about the workplace preparedness and putting up know your rights flyers or this is a Fourth Amendment workplace, that kind of thing. Concern, people often express concern about drawing attention to themselves, that in fact by vocally or visibly standing up for our rights, we will draw attention and enforcement that we might not otherwise encounter. And I'm curious how you respond to that.
So I think I wouldn't push businesses to do anything that they don't feel comfortable with. And so we have public signage that's yeah, we don't do business with ICE. Oftentimes it's allied members of the community that post those things and not businesses that have people who are really at risk for enforcement. And so we do encourage people to have privacy signs, which are just signs that say private or employees only. And it says nothing about having anything to do with ICE, and it protects them from a whole host of things, right? It protects them from any sort of law enforcement entering without a judicial warrant. It protects them from somebody from off the street coming in there and thinking it's a public space. So just having privacy signage that says employees only or privacy in certain parts is important. But I think that public signage is not something I would push folks to have if they don't feel comfortable having it. I think there's a lot of safety planning that happens behind the scenes. And another question we often get too is, well, what if the boss is not friendly? And so we talk with workers about how they can create a safety plan without their boss even knowing. How will we react if ICE comes in here? What will we do together? How will we prepare ourselves? Even if we can't put up a privacy sign, what will we do? So I think it's people to do what they feel most comfortable doing. Okay.
Thank you so much for
Yeah.
being here. I think, Stuart, if you want to start looking into those 6 instances, once I get the information from Gabby, I'll pass it to
Sure.
you. And Dave, if you can let us know when the flock rec was coming,
Be happy to. I'll also let you know when that webpage is up.
that'd be great. That'd be
Well,
great.
and I think I want to make sure we get the data on the 6th to
Yeah,
the
so-
chief.
yeah, I'm gonna,
David,
I'll pass it
so
to.
that-
As soon as
both
I
of
get
you.
that.
Yeah,
Right.
And they want to look into it.
great.
I would love to hear whatever you find out. So
Yeah,
please
sure.
let me know.
Yeah, yeah,
Keep me posted.
absolutely.
Okay,
Thank
great.
you.
Thank
so
you.
much. That was excellent.
Thank you.
We're gonna move because we have a long agenda still and it's already 6:20. Moving into House Bill 2061, I know Stuart was present in Springfield when it was signed. Before he starts talking, I wanted to just say I got ahead of this and I spoke to Cameron already. He couldn't be here today, so he shared with us a memo that I'm gonna read to you about how the district's responding at this point to the House bill. And then if there's any further questions, he is happy to come to the next meeting, if people want to continue talking about it. But I thought the most helpful thing is to hear what they're already doing. So,
You said Springfield.
this is a House bill in the state. Yeah, that was signed.
Duff City.
City, that's
Okay.
okay. Sure.
Thank you. Yeah.
You know what? I know geography.
No, it's okay.
I do
Yeah,
know. I
it's
do.
okay.
It's fine.
Yeah.
Okay. So the district's response has been, at this time, we are still in the preliminary stages of reviewing the bill and determining the full scope of its impact on district practice, policies, and procedures. Our initial work, however, has focused on two key areas, curriculum and policy. From a curricular standpoint, our first priority has been to ensure that students are being taught about anti-Semitism in a meaningful and developmentally appropriate way. In order to hold students accountable for anti-Semitic language, behavior, or actions, we also have a responsibility to make sure students understand what it is, where it comes from, and how it connects to broader patterns of hate, bias, discrimination, and exclusion. To begin this work, I've met with members of our teaching and learning department as well as multiple content area coordinators to review the bill and discuss where our current curriculum already aligns with the expectations outlined in the law. Overall, we believe the district is already in a strong position. That said, we are also looking carefully at where we can be more intentional, particularly in helping students understand the historical roots of anti-Semitism, the ways anti-Semitism has shown up over time, and how hate-based ideologies can impact individuals, community, and school environments. From a policy standpoint, the work is still to be determined. I plan to meet with district legal counsel in the near future to better understand what policy revisions or additions might be necessary. Based on our initial review, any changes will likely be incorporated into an already existing harassment, discrimination, and civil rights policies with specific attention to the definition of anti-Semitism adopted through House Bill 2061. Because this work intersects with student conduct, employee expectations, civil rights obligations, curriculum, and reporting procedures, we want to be thoughtful and deliberate in how we move forward. Much of the policy-related work will take place over the summer as we consult with legal counsel and determine what updates are needed to ensure compliance and clarity for students, staff, and families. In summary, our current response is focused on reviewing the bill and its implications for district practice, ensuring curriculum provides students with meaningful learning around anti-Semitism, hate, identity, and belonging, identifying areas where instruction can be strengthened or made more intentional, consulting with legal counsel regarding necessary policy updates, determining how the adopted definition of anti-Semitism should be reflected in district policy and procedures, and continuing this work over the summer in a thoughtful and legally sound manner. We appreciate the CEC's attention to this issue and the opportunity to share where the district is in its process. While I am unable to attend this month's meeting, I would be happy to attend the June meeting if additional questions arise, or if the committee would like a more detailed update once we've moved further along in the review process. Thank you to Cameron for that. We
Yeah,
can,
that's a really
Yeah.
thorough.
it was very thorough. I don't have
Yeah.
any questions for him. He
Yeah.
has to figure, they have to work
Yeah.
through it. So,
Thank you for.
yeah, I thought it was the most efficient way is to just get his answer before we talk about this. So
Oh, my-
I don't know that there's much for us to say at this point, but Stuart, I'm going to give you 5 minutes
I'm-
because I know you have
Yeah.
5 minutes includes your municipal court update as well.
Well, with regard to 2061, I was, in case you don't, actually know what it is, it's the anti-Semitism bill that was passed by the legislature about a month ago, signed by the governor quickly. And it has basically reporting requirements. And it applies to local school districts, including Clayton. So it's not limited to anti-Semitism. When it was in the Senate, it was broadened to include any form of discrimination, including things like religion, race, ethnic origin, sex, those kinds of things. So it was broadened, and when it was broadened, it passed the Senate 30-0 with no objection. Okay, but because it requires Clayton to comply, I thought it was premature to invite Cameron at this point, but it's going to take some work to comply with it. And I thought we could invite Cameron back before the school begins, in the fall, maybe in July, and tell us, where they are and how they've updated their procedures. Maybe we could see them. And, you know, that, because they're gonna have to do some legwork on this, okay? But once they do that, you know, it sets up a situation where if there are situations of discrimination, then those apply to both students and faculty, that the school district will have a procedure to deal with it. But in addition, they must report those incidents to the Department of Education in Jeff City. Okay, and that's totally new. And when Jeff City gets it, then they can either take a further action, talk to the school district, you know, say it's been dealt with, or take it further, even report to the Federal Department of Education under Title VI. But it also creates a database. So we know what's going on in our school districts, because right now we don't know. So that starts a database. Okay, so that's that's my you know, 4 minutes on 2061, House Bill 2061. It was the bill that was sent back to the Senate, but that's what we call it, 2061. Okay. Item number 2, which is not on the agenda, and I'll be very quick on it. Before I get into.
Do you have a motion to amend the agenda? Because we can take a vote on that.
Chief Smith, before I get into municipal court, I talked to Chief Smith, and we did this a couple of years ago, where some of us did ride-alongs, but I thought it was maybe timely for people who haven't done it, or even if you've done it, to do it again. And so he's agreed, anyone who wants to do a ride-along with the police, just if you don't have contact information for Chief Smith, contact me. I'll link it in. It's very flexible, anytime of the day or night. It's very flexible about doing that, but I think it's important that we do it, okay? And it's not so much that we're chasing criminals, you know, through streets with guns. You know, that's not the way the ride-alongs work, okay? To me, the important part of it is all the downtime. You're sitting with an officer a lot of the time with nothing going on, and you talk. And a lot of times the officer will tell you, you know, what he thinks about policing, what problems he's having, you know, with the department, and, you know, and loosen up with us, so that, you know, we're there to help them. Okay, we're not there to create problems. Okay, so that's, to me, that was most enriching part of the ride along that I had. Okay, so that's my 2 cents on that. Okay, if I intend to do it, I encourage everybody else. All right, municipal court. What I did was I sat through an entire court session. It was about a month ago. And the way it works is between 3:30 and 4 o'clock, if you have a lawyer, the lawyer can come in and they can work it out and get in and out of there quickly. At 4 o'clock, if the lawyer comes, it's too late. He's got to sit through the docket. Now, at 4 o'clock, that's when they open the session. And in the time I was there were at least 40, 50 people. What happened, they had signed up, and as they signed up, the case was called. Turns out that the courtroom is too small to accommodate everybody in one session. So there were 10 to 15 people that had to wait outside until they were all done. And then the second session came in. So people had to wait a couple of hours to have their cases heard. So I can understand sitting there, hearing case after case after case, you know, that could be pretty frustrating. And, you know, people are sitting there waiting to hear, you know, you know, their situation, and they'll have maybe 2 or 3 minutes with Judge Strum. But when he calls the docket, there are 3 options. You plead guilty, not guilty, or you can talk to the prosecuting attorney. Those are the options, okay? Now, there's a difference between the law and practice, okay? The law is they can plead guilty and not guilty, or talk to the prosecuting attorney. If somebody, and this is something that Steve is probably, he didn't mention it at all in his presentation to us, but I saw it, okay, and I talked to him about it afterwards. What he did was, if someone wanted to plead guilty, he wouldn't accept it. Okay, he said, look, I'm not going to accept, you're pleading guilty. I'm not going to hear your case right here, okay? Go talk to the prosecuting attorney, okay? And then that person would work it out with the prosecuting attorney, okay? So the practice is that we don't accept people pleading guilty, okay? Now, for not guilties, those people, they could ask for a trial. In reality, they try maybe 5 or 6 cases a year, okay? And the average docket has 40 or 50 cases. And of that, there's probably 300 people on the docket, most of which don't even show up. So actually, it's very rare for cases to actually be tried. If they're tried in housing court, okay? So generally, they're not, it doesn't happen, okay? So a couple of things I noticed was that everybody got 2 or 3 minutes with Judge Strum, but when each person came up to the podium, okay, Steve would smile at them. He would say, how are you doing? And he looked the file and say, okay, I can see you're here because of X, Y, Z, okay? How do you want to plead? Well, sometimes quite a number of the cases involved compliance issues involving their driver's license, insurance, things like that. And a lot of these people would come in and say, well, I've got my insurance. I took care of my car, okay? And with those cases, okay, and there was quite a few of them, Steve would say, okay, you're in compliant, case dismissed, go home. And they were done. And he did that at least a dozen times that I saw, okay? I talked to him afterwards, okay? Because I thought that was great. And these people were happy. They were done. They were done with us. And it turned out that, and I'm disclosing something that it's okay if I disclose it because, I got Steve's permission. But it turns out that when the presiding judge in St. Louis County discovered that Steve was dismissing charges once there was compliance without imposing a fine, that judge admonished Steve and said, you can't do that. You have to impose a fine. And Steve's response was, our charter in Clayton says that I have discretion to do exactly that, to dismiss their case without imposing a fine. And when the judge was told that, he backed off, okay? So we are one of the few, we may be the only municipality that actually has that practice. So there's a difference between the law and practice, okay? And our object is get compliance, okay? We're not looking to punish people. 2 minutes, okay. We have a Spanish interpreter. I had no idea. And I can't tell you how many times people did not speak English and we needed an interpreter, okay? And it made things so much smoother to have an interpreter. We had at least 2 cases where the person stood up and was charged 10 years ago with something regarding their car, and someone else was charged 8 years ago. And afterwards, I said to Steve, how in the world is this thing pending for 10 years? Well, it was through a bench warrant, it finally caught up. Person no longer had the car. Okay, so it got dismissed, but they were picked up by police somewhere. Okay, and then this stuff is floating out there. Okay, so anyway, I guess I'm out of time. Okay, so anyway, what I'm trying to point out to you is that observing what's going on is very different. These are real people with real problems and issues. Every case is a little different, okay? And for these people, going to court and giving up a couple of hours of their time, I think they're treated with respect and dignity and courtesy, and that's what I observed, okay? So
Great.
I gave it, my feeling was very positive.
That's good to know, because I know that yes, I know that we've spoken extensively with Judge Strum, so I'm glad to hear that everything we've spoken to him about sounds,
By the way, I talked
based on
to,
your observation.
I talked with Enrique also, so he was there also. So
Sure.
what I'm saying also,
Yeah.
you know,
Thank you for your work, Stuart. The next topic is kind of poorly timed now that it seems like we have some things to work on, but discussion of meeting frequency. Wondering, based on how the last year has gone and there not having been as much to talk about, and now there is, how people feel about possibly moving to maybe every other month. Thoughts? Okay.
okay. Well, you and I have already talked about in June inviting Ian Mackey.
Well, you talked about that.
What?
He's already been invited.
Yeah, he's been invited. Okay, so that's June.
Well, no, because we haven't
So
even
the-
said there's
the-
going to be a
Oh.
June meeting
The
yet.
question on the table is how you feel about monthly versus other meeting frequency, not
Correct.
what will happen at those meetings. So I think if we could just each share what we think about that, that would be great.
I can't think more than a month or two in advance. So I think that depends on the flow of work. If we don't have enough, we should cancel it. If we have things going on, we should have a meeting. That's,
So that's kind of we talked about this last year when I became the chair, and everyone said the same thing. Well, if there's nothing going on, we should cancel it. And if there's not, so, I spent about a year thinking every month, what are we going to talk about, and coming with topics and really not having much of a response. And so I personally am wondering if it makes more sense to go every other month so that we have time to work on these things that we every month say that would be such a good idea, and then nothing, and give people an opportunity to meet and do the work in between the meetings if it's of interest to them, like how in between this and whenever we meet again, you've agreed so graciously to dig into those 6 instances. Or I know Francis has spoken about connecting with the community members who've done the research on Flock, which I'm very happy to help you with. It's a little bit easier to do that when there's more time in between the meetings. So that's how I feel about it. I don't know how I'm not sure what time Ted has to leave, but I thought he had to leave early. Did you want to chime in first?
Yeah, and I do have to leave. Thank you. As far as the meetings are concerned, I think I'm kind of good with the status quo. The idea if there's nothing going on, um, we just postpone it to the next, to the following month. Um, and it does seem, I mean, this is one of the better meetings that I think we've had, very informative, and there was a lot to do, a lot of information to digest. So, um, I wouldn't I wouldn't want to wait. If this was a month that we were going to skip, I wouldn't want to wait till the next month because I felt a lot of this is so very appropriate.
Speaking as an ex officio member, previously, we've kind of laid out oftentimes what were our list of priorities and focus areas so that we could better understand kind of how we wanted to divide, conquer, and tackle. So just a reminder of that. Yes, I think that'll help guide on whether we do every other month or once a month. I think from what I've seen, we probably have of late had enough work for every other month.
Right. And last summer when I spoke individually to all the commissioners about what might be of interest for everyone to work on, and it was pretty quiet. That has been my challenge as your chair.
Yes.
Yeah. So
I think we tackled a lot of low-hanging fruit in our first 3 years. I'm looking at Stuart. And I think, George Floyd was going on. And so there was a lot of like stuff to do then. I mean, even with this MICA presentation, like I imagine how it would work is she would send stuff to Lauren and to you, and then you talk to the chief. And that would also take, I think, every other month kind of makes sense just as things go through because we're just advisory. It's not like we're gonna, we have execution here. So it would just be informative. I mean, I'm good. I say this selfishly because I work and I travel. And
Yeah.
so I'm probably every other month is probably more appropriate for me.
That's a good point. I would agree. And I got to leave you all. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Ted.
Thanks, Ted.
Ted.
Good to see you.
I still feel like I'm still somewhat new, so I'm still kind of learning what's going on. I know Lauren, we've talked even offline, like what stuff is of interest. Lauren, you and I haven't really talked. I don't know if we can get coffee or lunch sometime. I'd be happy to sort of weigh in. If these meetings always fall on this day, I'm gonna be traveling in July that same week. So having it. And then I feel guilt, like I was like, oh my gosh, I've traveled this way. Like I feel so bad or something like that. So having it less often, obviously, if you're looking at convenience, obviously it'd be more convenient. At the same time, I signed up for, once a month. So I'm totally good with that as well. And, participating and doing things as possible. So having it scheduled every month and then canceling it can be hard. Or like last time, it just so happened that not everybody could come and then we had to cancel it anyway. So I'm saying that to say I don't really know the answer, except, maybe it is a plan of maybe looking at like the next couple months of maybe switching it to every couple months with the intention and that we might actually bring it back to once a month. And then kind of sit down and maybe look at and maybe reconsider what some of the things to work on are. And then kind of reconvene from there. But I do realize sometimes like I think it was like for Black History Month, I was like, did we even do anything? Like there was no time. I felt like by the time we made a decision to do something, and then I reach out to my resources, they're like, it's Christmas. Like, I don't know where this person is. And so in some cases, I feel like there wasn't enough time to do that. But then in some cases, then yeah. So I don't know, I have an answer, but.
I think that makes sense. And in years past, I know that actually the summer has been a time when people cancel meetings and then reconvene in the fall. I also agree. I don't want to like let everything that we just talked about now that there's so much going on wait that long. But I personally am fine with moving to every other month for now, with the acknowledgement that there may be times that we need to go back to every month. But I definitely do not want to let this current topic disappear. So I think if we can all, I know you just said you're going to be gone in July, but
I think if it falls on the same week, 'cause it's the second week, but
Yeah.
it might be the third. It just all depends. Because I have an annual conference in July. And then also too, for some of these items, I know the sunshine laws and like there's certain things like we've discussed something's going to happen here. Can we report via email like what's happening, or do we have to acknowledge it in the next meeting, like whatever we find out from Chief Smith and things like that? So if we do work on something and somebody has a task, can it be emailed back to us or put into like we've had updates, it's in the minutes, or like what's the rules around that?
So we can report out, but there can't be any discussion on it. So if we send an email out, there can't be a list of questions and comments on that content, but we can send out information in the interim.
So if we get information, we could say, oh, looks like we need to have a meeting this month. We could do that. We just can't talk about it through
or
email.
people write typically like not for discussion, and then they put all the information in the
Exactly
email.
how it will come out. It'll say not for discussion and
Yeah.
it'll just be for informational purposes only.
Okay. And then we can make decisions from there what to do. Perfect.
Yeah, and if you get one of those emails, don't reply to it.
Oh,
Kind of the
That's good.
message, like that's why it
I just-
says not for discussion at the beginning.
I wouldn't discuss, but I might say thank
Is-
you.
Stop it. I mean,
Don't
that's
say
the
it.
whole point. It's like if you
Don't
start
reply.
replying to it, you create a conversation
Okay.
and that's sunshine. Like the point is gathering information and then when we actually come together, we have the discussion in public, right?
That's correct.
Yeah, yeah.
All right. So it should say do not reply then. Right? Do not discuss. Yeah. Got it. Thanks.
Well, then, I think we should plan with plan for July.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Well, let's, before you go into July, do we have an understanding about June or?
we're not, we're gonna
not gonna-
move to every
we're
other
gonna move
month at
on,
that point.
Yes.
July.
In
Yes.
July, I think we can reconvene on any progress we've made in the interim regarding the immigration and the flock cameras. I think we can ask Cameron if they've made progress yet. I think probably August would be more likely. So it would be September that we'd hear from him, but I'm happy to touch base with
And that's
him.
probably better for him getting ready for school
think
to
later
start,
better.
like. it's
Yeah,
a
I
lot
think we can talk to him
ask
about
to-
September.
That's correct.
So then September is a good
Right.
time. Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
They'll be
So
done.
then if
He'll
you,
at least
at
have
least.
his game plan.
Mhm.
And we required to, so that's, the timing's probably better.
yeah, I think this gives us more time to actually
That's great.
do things.
That's perfect.
Really quickly, if someone can make a motion to that effect, if
Yeah.
changing meeting frequency, I'd prefer to have a vote.
Do we have a motion to move the meetings for the time being to every other month with the understanding that we can go back to monthly if the need arises?
I make a motion.
Do we have a second?
Second.
All in favor? All right,
Thank you.
great guy. The next matter is member term limits. Remind me whose term is up.
I'm not sure.
Stewart and Ted.
Let's take a look.
I
I think
don't-
it's Stewart. I think
Gary,
it's
what-
Stewart and Ted.
You know?
But I could be wrong. Let's see.
I feel like you were just up.
Good look, yeah.
No, yeah.
No, he wasn't. I mean, not last year.
Not last year, but the year
See.
before, maybe. I was with the person who moved. I just got renewed last year.
So I would add, because I've been working with some others of the council to sort of make more uniform our basic policies on all of our committees. And we actually have 3 committees that we didn't have before. So we're trying, we're not there yet, but trying to get to more uniformity. This committee doesn't have term limits. It has terms, but not term
Right,
limits.
right.
Others do. I think we're trying again that we're still kind of all over the place with our different committees, and we're trying to make that more uniform. We haven't gotten there yet. But I think the direction would be, just as to this committee, that we would in some fashion sometime soon, but ask both Ted and Stuart whether they wish to come back for another term. But at the same time, we would probably, because I think we're trying to make this uniform, we would use social media to at least announce that there is an occupancy or there's a vacancy on the committee and see if anybody else would want to come forward. And typically then the policy is that the mayor ultimately makes a recommendation to the extent that some of these committees, there's an effort to have them be equal between wards, which is again, not always the uniform. We try to do that. So if Stewart being in Ward 3.
This one requires it, or no,
This one does.
currently, yeah, we've talked about changing it. but-
Yeah, so in any event, that process, I guess, will go on in the next month or two. The first step will be, as I said, reaching out in some fashion and try to formalize that. It's not just my saying to Stuart, hey, you want to be on again? At least have some uniform way of approaching the people and saying, are you interested in serving again? If so, thank you. And then we'll advertise and then a decision will be made. So I think that's the process.
Will they have to reapply?
Yes, I think the idea would be that at least, and it might just be,
Process, yeah.
it might just be a letter that says, do you wish to reapply? Yes.
Well, the
You
original-
send that in.
I don't think you have to
And-
fill out an
and-
Won't need brand new
application.
application.
We won't ask current members to do that.
Your credentials won't be part of it. It's pretty much a yes or no. Do you want to be on again? But at least put something in writing so there's something there. That's the plan.
I thought, I thought oral was enough.
Any other comment? Well, there's any public is anyone from the public on here? Are there any public comments? The public left?
We lost.
No
everybody.
members. of the
Okay.
public.
Does anyone else have any other comments to make? All right.
Before we leave the subject, Gary, at least you let me know when, you know, the deadline's coming up, or there's some way of,
You'll be asked via email at a
Okay,
minute,
okay,
like if you
right,
want,
okay.
if you're interested in continuing to serve. And if you are, you would say yes.
okay.
And then we will, like, we do advertise broadly that we're looking for people to join our boards
Yeah.
and commissions. And so we'll see. We don't, yeah. When this commission was first formed, people were like knocking down the doors trying to get on it, but we have not had that experience recently. So,
Right.
Yeah.
Me and Francis. Yeah, we've had a good run. It's been fun.
And then my one public comment is to congratulate Washington University on a small gift that they received. It was $200 million. So that's very, very impressive and very exciting.
Ah.
really good thing is what it's going towards, which is the public health school, which is the first school, new school at WashU in 100 years.
That's
So
wonderful.
very exciting. The School of Public Health.
Yeah.
This is the first new school in over 100 years
Wow.
at
Okay.
Washington University.
They never had public health before.
No, but it all fits together quite well, in terms of, all of the
Social
other things
services
that we
and-
work
yeah.
closely on. The other thing is tomorrow is commencement.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I saw a lot of activity there, yeah.
A little crazy, but
Actually, the one thing I do want to ask is that property that Washi was supposed to occupy in the Lutheran property. I guess they dropped that, but
Concordia Seminary?
Concordia, yeah.
Yes, that's done.
Say that again, David.
No, it's, yeah, and
That-
they stopped discussing
fell
that some time
through,
ago.
okay. But I wondered if they do sell that to developers.
They're not, we just approved them they're basically gonna keep their unit, the seminary footprint the same as it is now. And so they'll be building some new buildings, but they'll be going essentially in the same
Oh,
place as the current
perfect.
building.
Okay, I just wondered.
Similar density, all of it. Yep,
Okay, great. And open to walkers and all that.
Yeah.
Yeah, very
they're
important.
good neighbors.
Well, I was just curious if they were selling to developers, whether there was opportunity to do our housing program, affordable housing, but okay. Yeah, cool. Thanks.
Thanks.
All right. Is there a motion to adjourn?
Motion.
Second.
Was there a first one already?
Go.
Or second?
Great. All in favor? See you later,
Okay, thank-
guys. Thank you. I'll be in touch when I hear from Gabby with the information.
yeah, yeah.